topic of the material, I have one question for you. Do you know how to report what somebody else said? Now, we are going to talk about reported speech statements. I have two examples of sentences. Check it out. I love the Spider-Man films, she said. She said she loved the Spider-Man films. Those sentences are the examples of direct and indirect speech. In linguistics, indirect speech is a grammatical mechanism for reporting the content of another utterance without directly quoting it. Reported speech can be used when we want to tell someone what another person said. To do this, we can use direct speech or indirect speech. In indirect speech, we often use the tense which is further back than the original tense that we used. We also have to change some other words that we used. For example, pronoun. There are three tenses that we have to underline in the use of reported speech. The first one is present tense, the second one is past tense, and the third one is present perfect tense. In reported speech, present tense changes into past tense, present continuous tense changes into past continuous tense, and present perfect changes into past perfect tense. I will give you the example of reported speech by using present tense. I traveled a lot in my job. It changes to Jovita said that she traveled a lot in her job. Now, the example of reported speech by using present continuous tense. The baby is sleeping. It changes to he told me that the baby was sleeping. This is the example of reported speech by using present perfect tense. I have written a letter. It changes to he told me that he had written a letter. Now we want to talk about a little bit further about other tenses in reported speech. Check it out. I have the example of sentence by using past tense, in which it will become past perfect tense. You can see here. This is the example of reported speech by using past tense. We can see here that sentence in past tense changes to past perfect tense. In this sentence, we can see that the sentence in past continuous tense becomes past perfect continuous tense. In reported speech, we have to remember one thing, that past perfect tense doesn't change. You can see the example. Number 2, if the speaker said something which is still true or relevant, it's not always necessary to change the tense. It might happen when the speaker uses present tense. Look at this example. Now we are going to talk about pronouns, demonstrative, and adverbs of time and place.
This is the list of adverbs of time in reported speech that will have changes. Is the list of adverbs of place in reported speech that will have changes also. Here I have the example of adverb of place. For example, here becomes there. I have also the examples of demonstratives. For example, this becomes that. These becomes those. How about modals? Here I have the examples of modals. Can becomes could, will becomes would, shall becomes should, may becomes might. Reported speech, command will use told and ordered, while request will use asked. For example, he asked me, open the window. He asked me to open the window. She asked me, don't open the door. She told me not to open the door. Risa wanted to know, how did you do this? Risa wanted to know how I had done that. And now I will give you example of offering. Shall I bring you some tea? He offered to bring me some tea. We will continue to discuss about the use of must. I have the example here, must in present form. For example, she told me, you must stay here until 11 o'clock. She told me that I had to stay there until 11 o'clock. Number 2, she told me, you must come again tomorrow. It becomes, she told me that I would have to come again the following day. Now we come to the use of let's in reported speech. The first one is, this is the example of direct speech. He said, let's stop now and finish it later. In indirect speech, it becomes, he suggested stopping then and finish it later. Or, he suggested that they or we should stop then and finish it later. The example number 2, in direct speech, he said, let's leave the case at the station. In indirect speech, it becomes, he suggested leaving the case at the station, or he suggested that they or we should leave the case at the station. Now we come to the example of exclamation and yes and no answer. Here I have example in direct speech about exclamation. He said, what a beautiful hair she has. In indirect speech, it becomes, he said that she had a beautiful hair. Now we have to take a note of important information. I have 3 important information here. The first one is, for example, if we find a sentence, he said thank you, then in indirect speech it becomes, he thanked me. Well, number 2, in direct speech, if you find a sentence, he said good morning, it becomes, he greeted me or wished me a good morning. Number 3, the example of direct speech, he said congratulations, it becomes, he congratulated me. We have talked about exclamation before, and now it's our time to discuss about yes and no in indirect speech. Well, I have example here. Number 1, he said, can you swim? I said no. In indirect speech, it becomes, he asked me if I could swim and I said that I couldn't. Number 2, he said, will you have time to do it? And I said yes. In indirect speech, it becomes, he asked if I would have time to do it, and I said that I would.
Those are the material of reported speech. I believe that you can understand the material now. It's not difficult, right? Okay, see you later in other topic of English lesson. Still with me, Miss Nada. Bye-bye.